Earlier this week, I took the liberty of contacting a few friends and colleagues and asked them to pose a few questions that our panellists tonight might be able to tackle. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome 4 members of the VESKI family to the stage. Andrew Holmes, Marcus Pandy, Mark Shackleton and Snow Barlow.
Well, thank you, Julia, for your very kind introduction, and thank you all for coming tonight. This is a new direction, I think, in which we can share very briefly with you some of the activities and expectations of the VESKI scheme. So I'm going to start by turning to Mark and asking a question posed by another VESKI fellow, Egal Haupt, who's at the Peter Mac as well, a colleague. How did the offer of the VESKI Innovation Fellowship influence your decision to choose Victoria over other states or even other countries?
Yeah, so thanks, Egal, for the question. Could have told me about it a few days ago. So I think in the context of developing an academic career and moving from one stage to the next stage, hopefully upwards, there are multiple considerations that you take into account. And I think that arguably the 2 most important ones are funding. So there'll be, every academic in this room will be, will be very comfortable in acknowledging that every dollar counts in the research game, and every amount is very valuable. So there's no question that the availability of the financial element of the VESKI Fellowship was certainly an incentive for me. But I think the other thing that we really need in transitioning to a new career stage is an appropriate or a suitable environment, both physical but particularly intellectual. And so for me, one of the really appealing things about the VESKI Fellowship that made my relocation to Victoria even more likely was the fact that I was going to be coming in through my colleagues at Peter Mac, but also particularly through the wider VESKI community to a virtually instant intellectual network, an academic network that I could immediately tap into. The process of relocation does feel a little isolating, and being able to have very easy and rapid access to that type of network was also a really big incentive for me.
So was it just about the cash funding, or was there more to the... This is a question that Joseph Trapani, also a colleague of yours, director, has asked you. Was it just the cash, or what kind of support really mattered?
Yeah, so look, I mean, to be honest, the actual value of my VESKI Fellowship was about a 20th of the total money that I was able to raise over the first few years for my research. So although, like I said, every dollar matters and every dollar is important and every dollar is much appreciated, for me, a much bigger positive aspect of the VESKI Fellowship was that instant community that I could come into, the instant academic community that I was introduced into as a result of becoming a VESKI Fellow. And to me, that was far more important than the money. And
the network that our beloved colleague Julia has provided, I think, is vital to this. It's more about the whole support rather than the holistic view, I think, is very important.
I totally agree.
But Marcus, thinking about a question posed by Stella Clark, who of course also is very well known in the Bio 21 cluster community before she became Stella Connect. Marcus, Stella has asked, this is money provided by the Victorian government, and they receive their funds, of course, through taxation. And what do you think the enduring value to the VESKI, of the VESKI Innovation Fellowships are to the Victorian community, to both the government and indirectly, therefore, to the people who pay the taxes?
For me, I think there are 2 answers to that question. Firstly, I think perhaps the most important legacy is the people that we train, the PhD students and the postdoctoral fellows. In my case, when I came to the University of Melbourne, my research area essentially didn't exist at the university. And now, 7 years later, we have 3 other full-time continuing academic staff in my department other than myself. and a group of about 50 people when you add it all up. And I think that that's a fantastic activity, and which is recognized internationally, which didn't exist prior to my coming here. And I think the second legacy, obviously, is the research itself. What better return on taxpayer investment could there be than working on important health problems that are going to improve the quality of people's lives and hopefully, ultimately, reduce the cost of healthcare. In my area, for example, osteoarthritis, that's statistically the third largest health problem in Australia, behind heart disease and dementia. Today it's estimated about 6 million people have some form of arthritis and other musculoskeletal conditions, and there are billions of dollars that are involved in the cost of healthcare. And so if we can contribute in some small way to improving people's lives, reducing pain, and addressing the burden on the healthcare system, I think that would be an absolutely wonderful outcome.
And I think you mentioned when we were discussing this idea of creating this VESKI diaspora is really quite an important concept as a legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Snow, Tim Murphy, who also, of course, represents a great friend of VESKI and is now at GlaxoSmithKline, but was before that at the Bio-Melbourne Network, has posed this question about the legacy. What do you think, from the director's point of view, is the legacy of the VESKI investment in terms of metrics or even more quality of the science base in the state?
Personally, Andrew, as a proud owner of a new knee, I'm glad Marcus is here. And my Voltaren is all in the drawer now. But VESKI, over its 8 years of existence, has built an extremely strong foundation and an ever-growing fellowship of very capable individuals and the fellows. Now, today we will get to 16 fellows. And as part of that, we want VESKI to be an integral part of what we see as the civil society of Melbourne. If Melbourne is going to have a civil society, a research base, a knowledge base, and a culture of innovation is incredibly important to this. Now, the Minister may not agree with me here, but we're heading towards a globe of city-states in some ways. And the key thing about those city-states is they're built about very livable cities, but they're built about great education, research, and innovation institutions that power those cities, but make people wanting to come to those cities. So the diaspora of VESKI we're establishing is to help Victoria and Melbourne in particular to attract back both international researchers that have a genesis in Australia, but also people like Matthew Call who are coming to Australia for the first time. So that is our legacy. That's, the metrics, of course, are always important, and VESKI, sort of for every dollar that we've been able to use, given to us by the state government, we've managed to leverage $18 in terms of the fellows and their activities. So we leverage well, but really great cities, great research institutions are ultimately about people, and that's our legacy.
I think that's a really impressive aspect, the fact that we can not only attract locals back, if you like, that we can attract people who had no previous connection here. It's a credit both to the institution that has attracted them and to the resource that's underpinned that, I think.
And the great thing, just one more thing about the VESKI board. The VESKI board is a diverse board, some may say eclectic, but what it provides is it provides a strong research and academic base, but it's linked into the community and the business community of Melbourne. And I think one of the things we provide to the fellows is not only settle them back into an academic and intellectual environment, but link them to some of the drivers of the Victorian economy within the Melbourne society and Melbourne business.
I think that's a really significant point. And as a new member of the VESKI board, I've experienced that in an even more special way than I did through the initial support. It's very important.